Hi everyone, Mature Simmer here. So welcome back. This should look familiar. It's where we left things at the end of the last episode. So I did realize I was a really bad host last time. I was so excited to get into my new home that I didn't really explain my new home to you and what I have. So I want to go ahead and show you what mods we use within FS22 and FSN. So if you've not used a multiplayer server before, you're going to get a list of games here, and I've got things filtered by what I know things are called. Again, our new server number is 212. And so if you click on the details button that was there, it will then show you what you need. Since we didn't have that red exclamation point, we have all the mods we need. But you can see we have the info message HUD, we have the placeable 72 by 150 buildings pack, a house, a plow, which I think is the one I just bought, air hose connect sound, and then there's FSN customs equipment, so this would be the trucks and so forth that we saw there in blue. The FSN custom sign, so the sign outside there. They have power tools available, I'm sure for use on the admin side. The Wilson Pace Setter pack for trailers, composite machine sheds to give us some things to purchase. Measure is on the server as well. So again, I had mentioned that like if you bought that forest plot, you could turn it into a field, but you need to keep 5 meters away from the edge of your land, so you use measure for things like that. Park vehicle lets you turn off tabbing to certain vehicles, so I may play with that. We didn't have that before that I know of. And that may allow me to just then tab to my vehicles and turn off tabbing to others, but I'll have to research that. Additional field info I've been using in my map tours, so you're familiar with the capability of that. The HUD toggle is what lets us hit, I think, Alt-1 to turn the HUD off. To take animal husbandries to possible 32. We've got that loaded. We've got a silo. The workshop trigger. Once I get my yard set up, I'll get that going. Obviously GPS that we've loaded. FSN training equipment. So that is usually the equipment on the training servers, but this mod's obviously loaded on FSN servers. Manual attach, which shows that. Obviously the map. Another silo. FSN customs buildings. Obviously those are the buildings and the silos on the property. Game difficulty survival, so I'm sure they're using that to turn some capabilities off to make sure that we don't do any kind of automation and so forth. It was interesting to see this Beware of Straw mod. I've looked at that, but basically that allows you to suck straw into your harvester and kind of gum up the works, so I've got to be careful with that. And then a forest semi-truck if you're doing any kind of forestry work and you want that. So those are the mods that exist on an FS22 server toward the end of February 2022 in FSN. Okay, so continuing our tour of our new home, we've got the various farms and kind of the colors and what they look like. So in FS22, I guess they use different icons too, as opposed to just the farmhouse in FS19. So we start out here with the FSN farm with the purple horseshoes. It's like being in Lucky Charms. I'm the orange sheep. Then we've got the light blue farm, light green tractor, and then the pink pig. And as we add more, I guess we'll see what other options we have available to us. So that gives you the lay of the land of what we've got working within our server. I'm going to go ahead and get this plow unfolded. Obviously it's smaller than I thought. I thought it somehow would expand a little wider than that, but it's alright. We've got what we've got, and it's certainly wider than what comes in game and a lot easier to use. So let's begin plowing our field. So we'll lower it down, and then at this point we should be able to start doing it, and here we go. I'm still not sure, so this is part of what I'm going to have to learn, is how to make better turns, but no, what I need to learn is how I want to, my goodness, this is just not going to work. So, how I want to work with GPS. Do I want to go north-south? And it may change, I guess. I mean, because right now I'm thinking I'm going to set this up this way for these couple passes once I'm in here. Right, so there we go. Alright, so I've gone ahead and changed the GPS overlay to dots, which is what we used to have on the FS19 servers, and honestly what I really prefer. So I'm glad they added this as one of the updates recently, because I think that's just more appealing by far to the eye than what we had. So and getting used to this plow is going to take a bit because it's not as, it just isn't the same as what we had in FS19. The other thing I'm going to have to figure out, like, is do I want to adjust the field, make it a little bit bigger? Obviously, like this little piece right there, there's not really a purpose unless I make it have a purpose. So I could potentially plow that through, straighten out the field. Similarly, these edges where we've got sharp corners, you know, if I wanted to, I guess I could try to straighten them out, although here I'd almost have to terraform over it, and obviously I think that causes the same server problems in FS22. So yeah, this is interesting. I mean, obviously that field's not plowed, but it sure is shooting. Does look like it's limed, but nobody owns it. Yeah, it's FSN owned, as you can see. You can also see, you know, again, just give you some perspective of how big this field is. You can barely see the plow line that I'm putting in, and granted I'm partially off the field here, but still, there's a lot of field here. I guess that's one thing I can look at. So if I get off here, so I've got 128.2 acres of field, which actually isn't quite as much as I thought, but I think it's going to be more than enough to meet my needs. So I have 160 acres in total of land, but obviously I've got a good section of that in the forest and just around some of the edges here and so forth. So, but basically, if I, you know, even if I work this field in half, and I don't know that the centerpiece, so I'll talk about what I mean by that when I kind of come back and go to the center. If that's only 8 acres, but if we make that assumption and I don't include that and I do this bottom part and the top part, you know, in essence, and I split it in 2 different crops, which I think I may do just to get some variety of things in the ground here and start getting some experience on the FS22 side with a lot of different crop types, because frankly I haven't done a lot in the single player series I've done, because I just haven't gotten that far in, because it was only recently that we had enough mods that I felt, you know, I would do something substantial. So obviously in Hastings we've gotten 3 episodes in, but you know, really weren't planting. I guess we did plant wheat, but not like we got to the point of harvesting it, and I've harvested wheat in other things, so just not sure. But if I do, you know, a crop on the north part and a crop on the south part, you know, it'll be like, it'll at least give me 2 different crop types, similar to what I was doing in Misty Hills when we were down in Ohio, and just might be a little bit more interesting. So yeah, just trying to figure out where I want to operate the GPS and where I don't. So this is the south end of the field, and this is the portion where there is a road. Since the GPS goes off the field here, I'm going to drive this manually, because I want to make sure I get everything plowed. But at the south end of the field is the road that gets to the main road to the custom silo. So at a minimum, I could always drive down here if I can't exit at the top end, which may be part of the problem. So we'll have to see how that all fleshes out as we work things. But, you know, the good news is they've kind of put in that straight piece of road there. That was not there in the original map, in the single player map. Those are trees, and you basically have the home yard for the new farmer mode down there in that gray area that is appearing. I can't get an arrow pointer on my screen to point at the mini-map, but if you look at the southeast corner of that circle, that was basically part of the new farm if you're a new farmer, on the single player version of this map that Camel had built out. And so that you would go through that yard and you could get to these roads, but there were roads that basically came up here. And so you can see that it obviously looks like a different texture when we looked over there. It's interesting that we've got so many of these fields limed, but maybe they just decided they weren't gonna clear them if that's how the map was set when FSN started, when operations started working on it. Alright, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and lock to the portion here, because certainly this is long and thin, so this portion of the field should certainly be vertical GPS, and I can always rotate it 90 degrees for the other one that is wider than it is longer. And that's probably what I'll do, which my gut feeling right now is actually I think I'll enjoy that, because even though I've got a field, it'll truly make it feel like I've got two different fields, because I've got distinctly different ways of working one half of it versus the other half. And again, I don't know that it's truly half and half in acreage, but I don't know that it entirely matters. I mean, we know what we need to get done, and we're going to go ahead and do it. So obviously on this portion of the field we've got those center areas. The one part is kind of boggy, so I don't know, like, if we tried to plow over that, if it would go away with the water features, because I think that might be better. And I'm almost tempted to just do that as I go, but I'm just not sure that it's gonna let me get rid of them. But up north, I think I'm gonna leave. I'm certainly gonna leave the stand of trees, because I can't just plow over it. But in this portion, yeah, I'm thinking. I mean, it just really doesn't make sense to give myself the added work to go around it. And I've probably got at least 5 acres there, if not more, that I can reclaim as field. So in front of us we can see the sprayer and the spreader. So just if you weren't sure exactly where we were parking those last episode, that is where they're sitting right now. As you can see, it's a good ways along the forest to go there, but I'm going to do the headland around here, and then we'll eventually then start filling in the center. So we'll see. I may make a different decision up on the top, but like I said, there's trees in the center, so at minimum, obviously, I can't just plow over trees, so I know I can't do anything today unless I made it smaller, but that is a clear contoured item. I'm honestly torn, because I'm almost like, well, it might be fun to leave them and just work around it, and maybe I'll do that, because like once I plow over it, it's gone. I don't have a chance, and so maybe I should just give it a chance. I may find I enjoy the variety of it, because otherwise this does become relatively simple. It's just a long, narrow field. And it starts to get into that rectangular space, which for efficiency is great, but not so much for entertainment. So I'll take back my thought of I'm going to plow over it now. I'll leave it and kind of see if it starts to be one of those things that I don't like, kind of when I took out trees in some of my fields on FS19, like the field in the corner of 97 that always got in the way, and then obviously expanded the field just by clearing all the woods in the corner. So this is the center. This is what I was referring to here. All right, I gotta fix that little piece. I missed a bit there. Whoops, well that didn't help. Well, maybe that gets... No, I think I still missed a little bit. Just a bit of a challenge trying to do this, but I want to be thorough and again get kind of the feeling. There don't appear to be too many trees that are really close together here. You know, and once again, it's possible I could, you know, take out these little spits and straighten out the field and then just leave the yard, but I'm not going to do that until I start building the yard and see if I start needing that kind of space. So, alright, just trying to be careful here. Obviously, I don't want to get hung up on the tree, but I also don't want to miss part of the field. But this is the part I was saying, like if I assume this space here is 8 acres or somewhere around that, and I just didn't plant it, which is not what the plan is, but if I didn't do that, you know, and kind of left it as no man's land and the dividing line between my two fields, then, you know, I could say I have 60 acres and 60 acres, and that would basically be like 2 fields on my Ohio farm. So once again, that would give me kind of the time of what I was taking and what I felt was comfortable as the max was 2 fields at a time. So while I'm plowing all of this, my real decision's going to be, am I going to want to plant all of this in 1 year? And I honestly don't know the answer to that right now. So, I think I went too far again. So I'm going to back up before it gets more challenging, because I really need to start the turn earlier. Otherwise it doesn't work. But yeah, I'm sure when the map author was building this, it's probably simpler to put down these sharp corners than it is smoothing things out on a field. And you know, they obviously know there's mods and capability if we want to do that to plow the field. You know, even if I go to the help here, you know, allow create fields, the Y key would go ahead, and then suddenly that plow where it's hanging over in the grass, I'd be getting more field instead of just plowing what's there. I do feel with these kind of plows like there's an optical illusion almost with the way the shadow is and so forth, where it almost looks like the plow is hovering over the ground as opposed to actually being on the ground. Now you can see that's not true when you come down to ground level, and certainly if you zoom in, I mean, you can see it's there, but there's even zoomed in now that I see it, honestly, there's still a little bit of an optical illusion, like the plow's not really down, but obviously it is because we're creating furrows, and that's what we want to be doing. So once again, we've clearly got all kinds of fun here. I'm going to go ahead, and again, I'd like to try to use the GPS, so I'm going to kind of try to get myself lined up here at the edge of the field, and then do that. Oh, am I backing up still? Yes. So I don't want to be doing that, because it looks like basically the field moves in to the east a bit. So going up this way, which I assume is a 0 degree or 360 degree angle, will have me plowing less and less field as I head further and further north up the field. So if I take a quick look at the map, you can kind of see we're finally at about the same distance north-south that we were, and now we're doing the segment of the field up here that was a bit different. So yeah, if we kind of look at the perspective this way, we can see there is a tiny bit of roll to the terrain even up here. when I did some of my earlier episodes, as I was trying to figure out where I wanted to be, I talked about how as we get to the river, it kind of creates more of that hilly atmosphere, where once again, like field 12 here, while it might have a little bit of roll here and there, it just is flat, and a lot of the map is flat. That's just the nature of this part of Canada, I guess. And so that was what drew me to this a little bit, is it was one of the, well, really the only field I came across where I felt, okay, I have some terrain in my field, as opposed to just nothing. Alright, so at this point we're off the field, so there's no point in pretending we're plowing, because we're not. So we'll get up to this portion, put down the plow again, give ourselves a sharp turn so that the plow can get in, and we'll do that. I may need to run a couple headlands up here. This plow's not, I mean, it's wide. It's probably almost as wide as we could get in anything. Alright, there's Sears joining. So I believe he's over in Europe, so it's pretty late at night now. I do apologize for the last video, by the way, for the audio. I don't know that I'm going to be able to resolve it, which means I'm going to have to be careful when I am working and playing with other folks. I realized when the audio, the talking in the game was going, that fire was barely discernible. When I was editing the video, I could finally see that, and I really couldn't hear him. So honestly, there was more conversation in the start of the last video that I simply cut out, because it would have just been frustrating to you, because it would have been like hearing one side of a phone call. You could hear me responding to somebody who clearly was telling me something that you couldn't hear. I didn't know you couldn't hear it, so I wasn't repeating it. And so it just wouldn't have been a pleasant YouTube viewing experience, I think. So I cut a significant amount of material out of the last video at the beginning, where Fire and I were kind of talking, and you know, and you saw the result of it, because that was kind of most of our conversation was about how to get ourselves contractor rights, and he had figured it out, so he was giving me a little bit of direction. And again, you saw the end result of me doing it. You just didn't hear how I learned how to do it. I just told you I have to go figure this out, and so you may have thought, you know, I went and researched it on the internet or something and came back in, but no. Fire had figured it out while I was talking about other things, and let me know that basically instead of clicking on the farmer itself and then granting them contractor rights, you click on the farm in the FS22 setup, and that gets them the rights. So you can tell just from the way this works, we were at 0.4 hours when we started this field, and now we're at 0.8. Who knows, we may suddenly get to 0.9, which in theory means it took a half hour for me to go outside the headlands of this field, and part of the reason is that kind of stuff, because I'm wasting time having to go and fix things, because that plow doesn't, I just can't get in my head how it tracks. So I'll figure it out eventually, I know. Well, I think I will. I usually get pretty good at these things, and it will get better. But no, this is what I was talking about then. Like this field, I am pretty sure I'm going to go this way. And so then up here, you know, I can go east-west. Down below, I can go north-south, and it'll give me a different farming experience, at least, on each portion of the field, which is great, because that's kind of what I was looking for, is how do I get to a position where I feel, you know, I'm getting enough variety that I enjoy kind of what's happening and don't feel like I need to suddenly buy more fields because I'm bored on the field I'm on. So I'm gonna go do kind of this center section here, just get that knocked out, because then once I start going north-south here, like, I will let this do its thing. Whoops. Of course I need to put the plow down for it to do its thing, otherwise we're just driving. Alright. So that should carve some out. I don't know if we're going to have a tiny bit left when I go up the other side, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But this way I can do this and then, you know, kind of go north-south up the field, you know, later on. So I could just continue here, but I'm not going to, because I'm going to do what I said I was going to do, which is do this part. Oh. Well, I didn't want to do that because that's starting to fold the plow. That's not the goal. But I realized I hadn't turned off the plow, I had just turned off the GPS. So then I'm hitting keys, and I hit keys I didn't intend to. I started to fold the plow instead of lifting the plow out of the dirt. So while I'm doing this now, and I'm probably just manually going to run the center here, part of me is already thinking that when I'm going east-west up on the north side of the field, might be the time to do this part. And that I could have just stayed north-south on the passes outside this little indent, and that would have worked. And then, you know, I could have done this and then just gone up north above the tree line and finished up there. But you know, the biggest thing is just understanding that, you know, while on the map it looks small, we've got to remember this is a 4x map. Just like Hilly Seneca, or just like Seneca was. The map's not called Hilly Seneca, we just called our server that. So, speaking of calling our server that, I did want to bring up, I think I had hinted that, yeah, we had a name, but I wasn't releasing the name in case somehow we couldn't use the name. But at this point, I've not been told I can't use the name. We're just waiting for the website and the other pieces that use the name like that to be updated. So right now, the name we are going to have is not the name we have. So if somehow I've got some video that shows a different name, just be aware it's because they haven't made changes, because we've been told it could be again 24 to 72 hours. The person who put us on the server made that request out to the team that does that. He can't do it himself. So he's fully expectant that it'll get taken care of. It just may take 2 or 3 days, and in the meantime we may see it. I don't know. I think that's unlikely, because the only time I really go to the server there is if I'm selling crops, and we're not going to be at the point where we'd be harvesting yet in 3 days. So, so we wouldn't need to do that. But the name of the server, so again, my company, I guess if you want to call it that, I go by Misty Hills Agriculture, and since this map is not hilly, using that in the name seemed kind of silly, so I'm not going to do that, because it's certainly not descriptive of what we have here for the most part. But I'm going to use Misty instead, and we're going to combine that with Shellbrook, so it'll be kind of like when Ben Affleck and Jennifer Aniston were dating and they were known as Benifer. This server is going to be known as Mistybrook. So, you know, and again, I kind of shared it with the FMs. they were like, yeah, it kind of rolls off the tongue. They're fine with it. They understand the logic of it. They do feel it's generic enough, because I told them, my goal is, to not use my username, for example, like a lot of people do, and make it, you've seen my username, it's Karacairn2, and make it Karacairn Shellbrook or something, which is what a lot of people will do. And then if I'm no longer the sponsor, then it just seems silly, and it requires this extra work where there's a possibility that whoever was to take over when I'm finally done would be like, yeah, I'm good with just leaving Misty Brook, because that, is at least a name that could be a name. So Misty is a description as well as happening to be the first word in my company name. So, obviously it was Misty Hills Agriculture. We have kind of lost the hills at this point, but it doesn't mean that in my company aura and my company essence, that my company DNA still does not have hills in their, in their background, or desire to feel like there are hills involved. Not making much sense. I'm just trying to make this more than it clearly is. But kind of the hills are alive with the sound of farming, and that was kind of where the linkage was. As I think I know I've shared somewhere. Couldn't tell you which episode, but Smoky Mountains are one of my favorite places on Earth, and hopefully where we'll end up retiring in or near. And that would be awesome if we can do that. But in the meantime, as I play in this type of environment with outdoor agriculture, that's how I came up with the name Misty Hills Agriculture. And I specifically did that versus farming, because I felt if I want to go into animals, for example, I guess, it's a dairy farm or a chicken farm, so I suppose farming could still work, but I just looked at it as if I'm doing things that aren't necessarily farming related, but agriculture related. And so it actually might have been, I was just brilliantly having forethought into FS22 and productions, and then, because at that point, if I start owning some productions, which is certainly something I'm going to explore the possibility of on this map, the question will become whether I really do it. I'm probably not going to do it this first year. I want to get my hands around my farm. But, if I start running a grain mill, for example, agriculture could cover that a lot easier than farming could. You could make the argument that, if I'm doing something, a production that's, I don't know, obviously there aren't productions that aren't related to the farm or some crops that are out there for the most part, so I think it would work with anything, I guess, is what I'm saying. So, whoops, I have my wheel turned and I forgot about that. I was kind of getting to the end and was like, oh, I want to start getting ready to turn, and basically, like, I do that by turning off the lock on the GPS so that I can avoid running into the stream here. So yeah, I'm going to call it a stream instead of a river, because I think that's what it is. It's not really that large. It's, maybe 30. Oh goodness. Well, that didn't work. Let me, I'm not going to back up all that way, because that would be very difficult and would take a long time. And it would take longer than what I'm doing now. But yeah, it's not as visually obvious to me as it was in FS19 that my plow is down. So I thought I was good, and then suddenly I'm just driving and the field behind me is still stubble from harvest. Don't want that. So I'll get this little indent done. Then I'll run the few long passes, which might be 5 or less rows. And then we'll figure out what we do then. I'm thinking I'm going to do the little nodule that's in front of me that is up there next and do that. But yeah, I mean, my intent would certainly be to get vertically down to the south and do that shortly. And basically that will be my start, my start of the main field. So yeah, the real question starts to become, do I plant things? And it may be dictated for me by just how long everything takes. If I'm needing enough days to plow this field that I get beyond the planting window, and I mean, ultimately, maybe for my own sanity, I almost want to suggest that I do that, because yeah, there's some planting I think I could start with tomorrow already. We'll take a look at the crop calendar once I get this locked and get going again. Yeah, I guess actually 2 days. So in August we could plant canola if we wanted. But either way, then the day after that, in September, we can plant wheat or barley. And if I have that be one of my crops, one of those 3 be in one half of the field, and then basically leave the other half for planting next spring. That might be easier, but in actuality I'm not entirely sure, because the harvests, well, I guess they are staggered about the same. Well, not quite, because there's really only a month gap, where obviously here we've got all of winter and late fall that isn't usable for planting. So, well, the harvest is only shifted a month. The planting is shifted more substantially than that. So that was kind of my thought, is, oh, well, I could plant and then I'll just kind of have things staggered, and I'll be working half the field in one portion of the year and half the field in another, which is true, but they're just going to basically be one right after the other. And it's so hard to tell. This is testing my capabilities of functioning appropriately, clearly. And I left a piece there, which is unfortunate. I'll come back and get it, because I need to go up anyway, but so I'm picking up the plow because I can move faster. So when I need to travel up the field, say, it's better to have the plow elevated now that I'm going to run this distance, whatever it is, the likely several hundred meters, though. I can do that. I just need to find the part. I mean, I know, oh, there it is. I think it's like right on that blue line there. I need to find the part that didn't get plowed. And there it was. So, but yeah, I pick it up to move quicker, but then I can't tell that it's up. But yeah, it looks like it lowered it there, so So yeah, I'll go get however many rows this is to get that done, and then just depending on all the timing of when I can do this, because I'll likely be stopping my plowing session here shortly. But I still may have 45 minutes to an hour in already by the time I stop, so it's not like I won't have done a good amount of work. But once again, because of the size of these fields, you know, at this point, it's as if I'm plowing all 7 fields on Seneca, on the old map, and that would take probably at least 4 hours. So that's probably what we're looking at here for the amount of work to get this done. I will say, not having been active for really the better part of a year, an in-game year, it's like 12 days where I've been doing other things, and none of them were particularly farming simulator intense. I was doing a lot of automation on Hastings, but kind of once I got that set up, it was more just watching it do its thing, versus here I have to pay attention because I have no automation available in FSN. So but I'm getting tired sitting here doing this because I just haven't done it in 2 weeks, and so in the past, I was a little more used to it, but I've definitely lost the muscle memory of what longer sessions are like. So it's like, now that I did about 45 minutes before getting the equipment on and moved, and just the initial move in and getting added to my farm and so forth, I'm going into about 2 hours in pretty short proximity of working here in Farming Simulator, and I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, yeah, this might be a point to stop shortly. So my goal for sure will be to get this, and I'll press on as long as I'm comfortable. But right now, again, I can't tell if this is down. No, I guess it isn't, but now it is. Alright. So it really looks like it might only be 4 or 5 passes that constitute this portion of it. Let's look at the map. So you can see all that time, and that's what we've accomplished. So it's always hard to tell on the mini-maps. Alright, so it looks like Laz is back. We did have Ginger ready to join. He did send the information after we were added, so it's possible he's coming in to get his map set up, because he did warn us that he's got time today, but if we weren't able to connect with him today, we would have to wait for his next window. So he didn't really say when that was, but there was an implication that it might not be in the next few days, so that like if we wanted to get on here and start working, we needed to make ourselves available. So anyway. So we'll have to see. It looks like he said one of the other admins did their part, so we should be able to make transfers now. I'm assuming that means moving money to the server, but yeah, we're just trying to make sure here in the chat. So we'll see. what answers we get back from Laz as to what that means, because he said we should be able to make transfers now. That could be transferring equipment. I know they did say dealerships might be active at the start of March. Alright, so yes, the plow is still down, so we'll leave it. Which is good, because what I may do, although I don't know that I'll be able, well, I should be able to wait that long, yeah. So I may at least buy my harvester through a dealership, because usually that will give you some savings, and with as much as we're talking about for a harvester, where it'll be kind of just like the tractor, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. If I can save $150,000, that would be not an insubstantial sum. So that would certainly, you know, help us build out the yard a bit and so forth. So, but yeah, this is going to be interesting as part of the mayor work. What does that mean? Oh, I think he just meant yes. He just hit T, because T is what you do to start typing, and he probably hit T twice. So that is good, because there was a bit of a concern of moving money, and again, if I suddenly decide I move too much in here, then oh, I see. So they're saying the money that we put in here is not out of our web accounts yet, so that probably means if I go look at the web, I'm still going to see $10 million out there, because the $8 million wasn't removed. So we just need to be careful, but not like I'm looking to do a funds transfer now. I've got $4.7 million, and I don't need new equipment for a little while. Not sure what that means. We're asking about customs contracts. He says, yes, we can. But then he says, try it, but don't finalize it, which kind of implies that we can't. But, I mean, again, I'm not at any point where I need to do anything with customs yet, so I'm just more asking, because I just don't know what works in FS22. Like I said, dealerships are not working. Now, they're not working on either side, because they're just shut down, because there are changes being made to them on the coding side, but you know, there was definitely a period of time where people on the FS22 servers could just sell in-game. That was their only option, because there wasn't anything on the website that would let them take advantage of the FSN capability to use things, partially because they didn't have a custom silo on their map, so obviously we now do. Alright, so I'm back here bright and early. So I apologize, because I noticed when I got off yesterday that unexpectedly, somehow, at some point in the recording, things stopped. So best I can tell is I must have hit some sort of key somewhere that did it. But I think we lost like 30 to 45 minutes. So as you can see, I'm down here kind of on the south leg of the field, where it looks like where the video ended. I was up in the center finishing up the vertical passes, the north-south passes there. So hopefully we won't have any issues as I continue on today. One of the things I was talking about when I was down here was, I have decided I'm not going to go ahead and take this out, but driving through the center, I'm not quite sure we're getting a whole lot of different impact other than I am able to lift my tool. This will really be the first trip through the water feature, which I think is literally just like a swamp. But what I wasn't sure is, like, if I plow that at some point, will it really get rid of it, or will it be water in the middle of a field, and then I'll have to play with terraforming, which we're really not supposed to be doing because it has server impact. So, and so obviously I wouldn't do that, and then I just have water in the middle of the field. So I may just leave things the way they are. It's not like I'm in massive need of new field. I've got plenty of field here, even with technically the little bit less, and I've got other options where I can add more field if I want, such as taking out the little fingers of land that stick out, especially the little one down here, and just connecting things directly. And obviously, that little finger of land is not going to be a lot. I mean, maybe it'll add an acre. I don't know. I'm entirely guessing. So, let's see. It should be there. So, everything is good. So one thing, too, that we're at 1.8 hours of work time on the equipment. We started the field at 0.4, the plowing of it, so we're coming up on an hour and a half of time taken to do this so far, which all makes sense because I don't imagine the work time changes. I'm going to assume that that is consistent for Farming Simulator across versions. Because I'm sure that's a core feature, I would say. Why would you change that? So, and right now it's not like I'm suddenly seeing it's incredibly faster or incredibly slower. So, rather than double check, that's what's there. So, the fact that we get that little beep beep, which I'm thinking you can hear, but maybe you can't, as we approach the border of the land, makes me think that these are very clearly, at least that north island, fleshed out as parts of the field that are clearly not field, so that if you are on single player using some sort of automation, that it would work around that and really consider it an island, because it's doing that beep as if you're approaching the edge of the field. It would normally do that here as well, which I'm sure it does. I just, I'm not listening for it, don't need it, so I talk through it. On the other front, it does look like Swede is bidding on field 21. I don't know that anybody else will be doing that. It is nearby. If I was going to do something, it would be a field that might be of interest. But, like I said, I know my limits, and I'd be a liar if I said there isn't a draw of like, gee, maybe I should bid on it. Just because there's the fear of kind of missing out. Sorry, had to mute for a bit. Sneezes and coughing this morning and other things. So you can see little piles of rock popping up. That was the other thing I talked about yesterday, was I had kind of frankly forgotten about that because I've not run FS22 with rocks or stones turned on. Sorry about that, another sneeze. Hopefully that's it for a long time. I'm not typically a constant sneezer. Don't have heavy allergies or anything. My wife does for certain, so I get that, but usually it's just a few, but I was surprised by the one even occurring. So, but yeah. So we're going along, and because there are stones appearing, you know, I had gone on the map, but this was the part of the video that I didn't realize didn't get caught. You know, as you zoom in here, you can see we've got things around, so I'm going to have to see, since I've got giant areas of the field that don't have stones according to the map, once I get a rock picker, I will need to see if it really doesn't do anything over blank field, and then I may just pick to the map. I will say, if it works that way, it's going to be a massive thank you to either Camel, the map creator, or you know, the FSN operations folks if they modified something, because I've seen, like on Deer Creek, you know, it's a massive stone field typically, so which would mean I'd have to run the entire field with a rock picker, which has a super small working width. I think the biggest one I'm going to be able to get, and certainly this map is big farming, if anything is, with the size of the fields that we've got. So my intent is certainly buy the biggest stuff I can, which is partially why I moved so much money in-game, because I knew I was going to be buying pricey equipment. But even with the largest working width, I think it's 5 meters, and I think it moves it. Well, it might move at 11 or 12, but either way, I mean, I think this thing is 18 meters, so, you know, it's more than 3. Whoop, I didn't realize that I was already hitting part of the field there, so let me back that up. At least this time I'm going to be entirely anal and thorough about hitting every inch of the field that I see, so I'm going to maximize my yield, damn it, no matter what anybody else says. And so anyway, you know, a little more than 3 passes, and as we can see, I mean, this has taken an hour and a half, and even if I'm running at the same pace, that means to do this much with a rock picker would take me 4.5 hours. And you know, so easily doing the whole field would be like 10 just for rock picking, and that might be being optimistic, because again, you've got turnaround time, you've got all this other stuff, so in real time it might be even more. But if it really just is where they're popping up, and while it's going to be popping back and forth to the map constantly to try to figure out where it is, although obviously on a plowed field, like as you drive up on them, it's pretty obvious seeing them, but just to make sure. So there's a little pile there. You know, but then, you know, we haven't had anything else pop up here, so on other maps I've definitely seen it like this constant barrage of things. So if somehow I don't edit this section out of the video, I'm checking to make sure the recording is still running. Sorry, he started to clear my throat before I muted, and again, if I don't edit out the go check for the recording part, I apologize for what hopefully was just, whoops, that's not working, because I didn't, I think all I did was lower the plow. I never locked onto the track, so let me circle back. So that's the problem with having a million things to do, like check the recording and this and that. You're pressing keys all the time, and your brain's like, oh yeah, I did that. But I didn't. So obviously I had started a little over to the right, so I'll be a little into the other row, which is fine. I mean, it's not like it matters. I don't know if now it dropped 2 stone piles. There was one that had appeared just before I turned around, but not sure what that was like, or if whatever little bit of, I hope it's a little bit of damage I would get from stones on my plow. If I got damage because I rolled over it, I assume I probably did, but doesn't look, it's hard to tell against the darker field. Like the fuel bar, for whatever reason, I can see a little clearer, and I'm down to maybe 3/4, but I do have some damage, I think, is what I'm seeing. But, you know, obviously that would just happen just from using the tool as well. So we're continuing along, and now we're on this part where, again, I can at least lift the implement, drive quickly through this section, so it will speed things up a bit. You know, I'm probably only going to gain a total of maybe 15 minutes in total. It probably won't even be anywhere near that. It'll be 5 minutes or so for the few passes I get to do that here, but every little bit helps. And aside from that, like I said, my concern and danger is that it doesn't get rid of the water if I plow over it. Although it does seem that it is even, but I don't think that water functions in FS just by elevation like that. As far as if it's placed there already, you know, obviously it does function that if you level an area, the water goes away. And that may just be because it like rewrites the texture, but you know, whatever the reasoning, it's still gone away. So apologize for a lot of the pauses. I'm just again trying to keep you guys from having to deal with crazy, just frankly unpleasant sounds of me clearing my throat this morning. So it's unfortunately part of the stuff. You know, when I wake up, sometimes it, you know, seems like I gotta work out the throat. So that's why we've got gaps in speaking, more so than just the normal cadence of my brain kind of putting together sentences and mid-sentence that I'm sure by now anyone who's been on the channel for a while has gotten used to. Because I'm not giving a speech per se, I'm just speaking with you, and everything is impromptu for hours on end. It's hard to make sure that everything comes out in full sentences. I do what I can, but usually not successful, where I'm just speaking and thinking of things as I go. so this one doesn't extend quite as far east into the field. They both start about the same position on the west side, but this one ends earlier, so won't be lifting the plow for probably more than, might be 3 passes, but although it might not be, because the third pass I may be hanging out over the edge a bit, so, but probably 2 more. And then we lose that tiny bit of drag racing in the tractor. So, another part I was talking about at the end, and wow, it just literally got brighter right at that moment, was how I really haven't felt the connection yet, just fresh out of the gate with the server, in the way that I was with FS19, where it was kind of like, I can't wait to get back on the farm. It was almost yesterday after the hours and hours of work, because we had the kind of initial moving of equipment, all that initial stuff had happened earlier in the day, and that itself took almost an hour, or 45 minutes, whatever it was, and then coming in and plowing for almost another 2 hours. I was kind of like, all right, I'm ready to get off the server. I had had more than enough. And I will say, this morning I woke up bright and early, and some of it was certainly a bit of excitement of getting back on here. And so yeah, just trying to take in the view here of this server in the morning, because if you recall, if you've watched any of my Misty Hills on Seneca episodes that come before these, many times in the morning I just kind of stop and marvel at what I was seeing. So I'll get rid of the interface so we can get a unobstructed view here, but definitely flatter, so not gonna lie, it's, well, the hilliness that we have even over there is nice. I can't argue that this map is not as hilly as hilly Seneca. So, let me get here. I just was focusing to not hit the button. Because then all that turns into is me having to stop and reposition and waste time. But so the other thing, I'm not sure if it made the recording or not, so I'm going to talk about the name of the server again, and if it did, I apologize. You get to hear the rationale again, but it just reminded me, kind of as we were talking, obviously the previous server was Hilly Seneca, because the map was Seneca County, and it was hilly. It was descriptive of what it was, and my goal was, if and when I decide, hey, I'm not going to be mayor, I'm not going to be sponsor of the server anymore, and someone else takes over, and maybe I leave the server entirely, or it's just, hey, I'm not sponsoring the server, but I'm going to remain an FM on it. My intent has always been to make the server name generic enough that if someone wanted to just say, I'm not going to waste time renaming the server, this is actually good enough, I enjoy the name, I'm just going to leave it, that it doesn't have what a lot of the servers in FSN have, is kind of that, whether it is or not, I call it ego-driven type of naming of, hey, I'm spending money on this thing, I'm going to plaster my name on it, just like companies do with sports arenas. So we've got, LP Field or Bridgestone Arena, Progressive Field. Those companies spend all that money there to sponsor that field. Sorry, just trying to get the frogs out. They spent all that money to sponsor that field. Darn it, I'm going to let people know that I'm doing that, and I'm going to put my name on the walls. Similarly, sponsors many times will just have their names on the server as well, and then obviously if you're not the sponsor anymore, it's just, awkward, I guess, is the word that comes to mind. To me, I don't care, but to other people, it might really be, I don't want it to be Swedes Shellbrook or something. Let's say he was the sponsor, and I picked it up, so I might change it. So it's the same thing. If and again, if I use my handle, if I did what people were doing, it's Carricairn2, so Carricairn2 Shellbrook, while easy, or whatever, still has my name in it and makes little sense for someone who has no connection to that in any way. So that was how Hilly Seneca was named, because it described the hills, and it mentioned the map, which normally most people do leave some sort of reference to the map, although sometimes putting their name in and whatever, they play with it a bit. So here on this map, obviously we look at it, it's not incredibly hilly. It might be rolling, but hilly would not be how I would describe this map. So I wasn't going to call it Hilly Shellbrook. And so I took my name, which is my farm name, which is relatively general, and we've kind of done as I described it. And again, if I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry hearing this corny story again, but it's like when Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez were together and the press dubbed them Benifer. You kind of glom the two names together. So decided to do the same thing for the server. So welcome to Misty Brook. So we've kind of gotten rid of obviously the front part of Shellbrook, put in the farm name, combine them together. So to some degree, I'm including my name in it, but it's a farm name that is general enough that, once again, there is a possibility that someone would say, yeah, Misty Brook's a nice name, I'll just leave it alone. I've seen housing developments probably called exactly that in some places. It was, definitely Misty something or Brook something. Obviously probably a lot more Brook somethings than Misty somethings, because I've not lived anywhere that's incredibly misty. Lived a lot of places that are incredibly snowy, like I do now, but rightfully so. No builder wants to remind people in the middle of the summer that something terrible is coming at the end of the year, so I've never seen any development with the word snowy in it. But be that as it may, that is the name of the server, and yesterday things weren't quite set up on the web, but we did get a note from Laz, who is the wonderful person in, I assume, operations. I don't know who's really in what department, but he's the person that did the work to get us on the server. Came in and I think set the server up and then said, hey, it's ready, sign on in so I can attach you to your farm. But then someone else does the work on the web. So he had to reach out to them. He sent us a note. The person's name was Neon, so he let us know, hey, Neon's let me know that he's taken care of stuff, and he was indicating yesterday that we could do transfers, and I think that was appearing in the on-screen chat that was popping up just before the recording stopped, for whatever reason that it stopped. And so you may have seen some of that conversation going on, but I don't know that I was talking about it specifically. So to be able to do that, part of that includes just kind of getting us set up properly on the web. So I did see that my Mayor account, which basically allows me to issue contracts on behalf of the server, which would either typically be for field plowing before auction. So as I talked about, field 21 should be plowed, but I did look at the map before the end of signing off, but I think it was in the part of the video that was missed. Field 21 is marked as plowed already, so I don't need to do anything with it. I don't know, we'll see. If I remember, maybe I'll go check up there at some point. Probably what will likely happen is when I'm liming the field, so it will probably be in the next episode, because I won't be liming in this episode. I know that for certain. When I have to refill, and likely will go buy a truck and an auger that will allow me to do that, so that I don't have to keep taking the tractor and the trailer over to the silo by the custom silo to get lime. When I go get that equipment, I will likely go by field 21. If for no other reason, then I do want to find, if I can find a way from the north that I can get to the road, like what I'd need to do to not have to drive through the forest, because obviously it's not really workable to do that with implements. But I would like a way to get up to the store if I need to, or from the store down here, so that I don't have to take the long way around if I can avoid it. If I can drive through the countryside without obviously going through people's fields, I'd like to find that way. And ultimately I may determine I have to go around so many trees that it doesn't make any sense, but we'll see. So another thing of stones popping up. So I think this is our last pass on that bog area, I guess I'll call it, that I get to pick up my plow, because it looks like, if I'm visually running the line up, I think the next one I'll be hanging over, so I'll be leaving the plow down. But, you know, making good progress. If I pop back to the map here, there we go. It took a while to update, because obviously it's a lot of ground, I'm sure. But I would say we might safely be past half of the field is plowed now. So, not bad. But yeah, the morning here, I'm not sure in FS22 that it looks the same. I would almost say FS19 I was more impressed with, but maybe not. I don't know. So yeah, I can pick this up, but I do have to be careful because... Alright, yeah, it's not there yet. Not there, but at this point I'm just going to leave it down, because I was going to say, the way that island is tapered, it's going to have part of the field in my path sooner than later. So that was all the time I can save up here, and I'm nearly 100% certain that I will be saving no time at all up north, because there's trees in that island and I'm going to have to actually go around it. If I was really crazy, I could, I guess, plant trees in the island here too, but why? Costs money. I'm certainly not going to like harvest them suddenly, and it just doesn't make any sense. So I know I'm not going to do that, so I will just say that unequivocally. If I do, I've probably fallen on my head in real life, and hopefully someone who knows who I am in the real world will have called the paramedics. Because yeah, there's no sane reason to do that at all, and therefore I will not be doing it, because it would just be a waste of time and money and would create greater irritation, because at least driving through and staying on my GPS line wouldn't be possible if I did that. So I would just be creating more difficulty for myself. And frankly, time is difficulty enough for me when it comes to large amounts of work in anything, but FSN is the thing that kind of requires me to do large amounts of work if I work with large amounts of field like I am here and getting field prep done. But certainly if I continue to go down the path of maybe only working half the field each year, just to keep the time a little bit more reasonable, like after this first go round, you'll probably then never see the entire field being done at the same time again. But, some of it was certainly just wanting to get a feel for the field and so forth. So, the other thing that is always nice and why some would say a glutton for punishment, that I do the plowing myself if I can prior to auctions on fields, is it helps me learn the fields around the map, so that if I suddenly get the urge to expand, I will likely have selected another favorite field, like, yeah, I'd like this one if it comes up. And so, while currently the prospect of me wanting to have another field on this map is very slim, I'm always one to never say never, because if I could get an army of contractors working for me as they come in and kind of get known as a large working farm operation that helps folks get going, then I might be willing to take on more acreage, because I'd have people to do the work and it wouldn't be my time that I'd have to clear to do it. But I'm just not sure. There was a speculation we all had that the contractors were all going to FS22, but we were told at one point, and I don't want to say like we were told, like we specifically asked a question and they answered one of us, and we were the instigators of it. But somewhere on one of the Discord channels, there was a comment that 50% of the new folks coming into FSN are still FS19. So, just not sure why we weren't getting the contractors. And it could be exactly that there were other farms that had grown so large and that constantly spend on the bot advertising and have fancy graphics and so forth. Sorry, just trying to make sure I sound normal. And, they just may be attracting people as they come in. And so that might work. And I'm certainly, while I pop into the whitelist waiting channel once in a while to just say hello, maybe try to chat with some folks, but there's usually, when I've gone in, there's not enough people and there's not really an active conversation going on, so you usually get a hi from the couple people that are paying attention, and then it's crickets again. So I haven't made any friends that way, so it might be possible some of these larger FMs, that's part of their strategy, is they spend some time every day in whitelist waiting, just getting to know people and then letting them know, hey, when you come in, look me up, I can give you some work as a contractor, and people may just be doing that, which is fine, and obviously something I could do too if I wanted, but that's part of what I've just not prioritized, because frankly, I'm not playing this game to be a management sim, I'm playing this game to be farming sim, and per the name. And so I'd rather be working my farm when I have time than playing manager, because I have played manager more than enough in my real life. I don't view that as enjoyable leisure time experience, where obviously I haven't farmed in real life, so for me this is fun. But yeah, I could go kind of the, if you build it, they will come scenario, and just basically go gangbusters and start bidding on everything that comes up on the map and get myself to 1,000+ acres like some of these large operations. This map certainly makes that not that difficult. I think if I bought 4 or 5 more fields, I could be there. Certainly if I bought 1 or 4, those are, I think, 300 acres each. If you buy both of those, that's 600 acres. Add that to this, you got 750 acres already on 3 fields. And there's 39 fields on this map. Granted, those 2 are the big ones. But you get my drift, I'm sure. I could do that and get a lot of land, and then just basically then actively go out and press hard for contractors. But to me, that becomes, then that's the job. One of the jobs you're doing is just basically staffing and training and explaining and being available, and that's part of my challenge too, is I can't monitor and answer Discord all day when I'm working if I'm focused on things or in meetings. And so if I've got contractors who are like, hey, I don't know what to do, or what do you want me to work on next, and I don't answer them when they're available and ready to do the work, then they go on and do something else, and ultimately they likely go on and become a farmhand on someone else's farm, because they're like, all right, I never get, like when I'm ready to play, I never get work from this guy, so I'm going to go find someone else who aligns better with what I need. So, but that's not to say I won't dabble with trying to see if some contractors want to come work. And if I get a group that suddenly makes working this field in its entirety easy, I would consider potentially then getting another field. It's just I still don't see that it turns into that I have 2,000 acres or something. Like, I think the biggest FM that I've spoken to or communicated with, again, we might have actually talked on a voice channel, but either way, doesn't really matter, that I've communicated with at some point. I think the largest one had 2,500 acres. So so there are people in the FSN community that do run farms that size. I think at that point, in a lot of cases, they're across multiple servers, because you're allowed, especially if you sponsor servers, like you would be able to be on as many servers as you want if you were willing to pay for them all. But even without sponsoring, a mayor has another slot that they can use on another server if we wanted. So I could be FM somewhere else and basically work 2 different maps, well, likely 2 different maps. I mean, I could just say, hey, I want another slot on another Shellbrick server. Not quite sure why anyone would do that, but it can be done. I think at this point I'm going to go ahead and finish up down here, because otherwise I'm just running way down here, and now at this point it is kind of way down here just to do these, and it might take 2 passes to ultimately finish this up. So I just we'll get this part done. Yeah, I think we're going to have a tiny bit up here. Yep. Just because of how the edge of the field went when I swung out. Didn't quite get that, but I think we're going to get all of this way. But yeah, not sure why you just move to another version of this map to work. you know, more fields, especially like, you know, if you want different fields. Unless, I mean, I guess there's the possibility, oh, I really wanted this field, but another FM outbid me and they have it, but I really want to work that field. You know, I suppose that might be a reason you'd go on to another server in the same map. But, you know, in this case, the reality ends up being like getting on there, you know, because we're not the mayor. And even if you're the mayor, like coming onto an existing server, there's still financial limits as to how big a field you can buy to begin with. So, you know, you wouldn't be able to get any of, you know, let's say I really wanted to have the experience of working one of the giant fields here for some reason. You know, it's not something I'd be able to buy immediately. I'd be waiting for auction there too, and the only difference would be, you know, maybe there I would win it and here I wouldn't, type of thing. But frankly, I mean, the cost of those fields is over almost, it's about $4.3 million each. So to buy both of them, I'd need $8.6 million, and I don't have that much money. You know, I kind of had that in total at this point, but now I've invested, you know, in this field and equipment. And so, as I said, you know, I've transferred $8 million into the server here, and I'm already, you know, I think down to just over 4 million. Yeah. So yeah, well, almost 5, but 4.7 million. So, and I think I only have like 3 or 4 million in the bank. So I think if I squeeze the blood out of the turnip everywhere, I might be able to scrounge up 8.6 million. But then I'd have no money for any additional equipment or anything, and just having a tractor, a plow, a sprayer, and a spreader, I can't make money that way, because we can't do paying contracts. You know, you can't do the in-game contracts here on FSN. I could work for other people, but then, you know, I'm back to contracting, and I don't necessarily need equipment, but it just wouldn't make sense. But I'm just kind of talking it through for those who want to understand the dynamics of it. You know, that would be the situation. I'd be flat broke, and, you know, I guess I'd have, well, no, I wouldn't have, because I don't have a harvester, I don't have a seeder. Like, I couldn't even get a crop in the ground, you know, if that were to come to pass. Because as it is, like, I think field 21 was 1.5 million. So, you know, if you buy that, that would chew that up. And that one's not that big. I think it's a little over, it might be approaching 100 acres. So, oh boy, I think I'm gonna hit this tree. I don't know why I cut less sharply. That was goofy, because now I'm gonna have to screw around here. But anyway, oh well. So let me do that after. So again, I am starting to learn, you know, maybe I want to take that tree out at some point, because clearly it's in my way, even the first time through the farm here. So there are some things closer, but once again, this is the piece I talked about of the spit of land that, you know, maybe it makes sense to eventually just get rid of it entirely and turn it into field, because it's small enough. It's not like I'm going to put anything from my yard on it, because then it would just be in the way as well. I mean, even if I just cleared the trees and was like, ooh, I can park equipment there, even if I didn't put a shed up or anything, that would be even more obstructing. You know, it's just like having the trees is kind of what I'm trying to say, but not actually getting out of my mouth. You know, so it still would be the same problem that I just had, where I'm turning a plow around and I'm bumping into my equipment or my buildings or whatever, and It just really doesn't need to be there. So if I did anything with that segment of land, alright, I'm just trying to get down here because, like I said, this is what I discovered as I drove around here is, you know, working it, because the slope is so gradual, it does feel like it's flat. But there is a bit of roll to this field where some of the others really are flatter. Yeah, so this tree I think is going to become a problem, so I'm going to bump or go backwards before I attempt to start to turn here. But then, yeah, we need just a hard turn so that we line up as well as we can, which is not very well, clearly. Let's see, hopefully that works. Yeah, nothing on the inside curve hanging out, so we're all good. So this should be this pass, then we'll go take care of that area, and then we'll be on the northern portion of the field. I'm intentionally not saying half because I want to train my brain that I'm not entirely sure these segments are equal. And I don't honestly, though, know how I would ever know if they're equal. So yeah, the other thing I'm debating, because I know we talked about, like, this year, although I still may not for planting, because I otherwise I have to harvest it all, so I won't. So anyway, let me get this going, because I obviously can't walk and chew gum at the same time. I can't talk and think at the same time, at least not when doing FSN. You know, if I was to run like two crops on one on the north side, one on the south, I'd divide somewhere in the center, and either way, like, I wouldn't run the crops right up against each other. There'd be a border that wouldn't be planted. And so what I was thinking for a second was, well, do I want to, like, put a strip of grass in and in essence visually divide the fields, which is, you know, something I've seen like on Wild West, which has massive fields too, and, you know, is a bigger map than this. It's a 16x map. Alright, so once again, I did go check, make sure the recording was running. We're at about 50 minutes, so it is running. And this was about when the thing died last time, and, you know, I know there's no time limit on the tool I use to record, which is OBS, for anyone that is wondering. So it's running, so I think we're good. But in case somehow, again, I forget to go back and take out the spots here, that's what was happening. Just writing myself a note to hopefully remind me to look for 3 different areas where I checked the time. And usually I do things fast enough on the video editing where it's not like I'm doing it 2 weeks later and I've done 4 other jobs on the field and I can't remember the details. So I'm pretty sure I'll be editing this in the next few days. So hopefully that note's enough without noting exactly which time it was and so forth. But especially since I don't have the time up on the screen, so it would be hard to tell in the recording. I just need to know where I am on the field. But anyway, yeah, that's all working. And, you know, but putting a grass strip in, then that forces the delineation to be there all the time, and if I suddenly move it, now I'm like plowing up that area of the field. It just creates a bunch of busy work to some degree that I don't know right now that it makes sense. You know, if I get to the point where I'm very, very firm and consistent, and it's like, yep, right straight down the center of that center bulge, you know, is always where I divide things. So I'm just, out of my driveway coming out of the middle, I'm gonna go ahead and just include a strip of grass that I can always run equipment down, or stage equipment on, or whatever. Maybe in the future I'll do that, but right now I could just leave a strip empty in between, because the goal is obviously you don't want to be harvesting and then suddenly mistakenly pick up part of the other crop, and then your harvester basically stops working at that point until you go empty it, because you've kind of contaminated your load. So I learned that on the FS19, went on field 97, just because it's like, hey, I bought a root crop harvester, and at the time too, with the FMs that were on, there was a discussion that maybe some of them would do pigs. And so we had talked about perhaps, basically selling each other, I'd sell them some root crops to feed their pigs, but nobody ended up doing pigs that was ultimately there. They all ended up doing cows if they did animals and did dairy. So, and then they grew their own wheat or grass or whatever. So I didn't need the root crops, but the one year I'm like, well, I just want to enjoy the fact I have root crops, but I also didn't want boatloads of one crop. So I divided my fields into segments, and I did plant right next to each other, thinking, well, with the GPS I'll be able to be perfect. And it's actually more challenging than you'd think, because obviously the planter and the thing I neglected to think through is that the planter and the harvester for root crops are not the same width. So it's not the same GPS line, even if I was perfect, which also is very hard to do. So I ended up just wasting a bunch of time at the edge there, and vowing to myself I'm never going to butt two crops up against each other and just plant one row and then immediately, change the planter in the next row to something else and then come up right next to it, because it was a mess. And so I'd leave, whether I'd leave a full 18 meters or 15 meters, whatever the plow width I'm using is, I don't know, but or even a full planter width, I may move over a little bit just to use more of the field, but it might move around, and that would be enough, is kind of what my point is. It's not like grass gives some magical capability if you use it as the divider, versus just leaving part of the field unplanted, and that's your separator. Works the same way, and it's easier. I don't have to plant grass, I don't have to mow it, because I decide this year, wow, it looks ugly. When it's grown that high, I'm going to mow it down, just so it's, kind of like what we have near the river here. And obviously little bushes wouldn't suddenly start sprouting. That would have to be, I think, terraformed into, or placed, I guess. So actually, I could put bushes in, but, which I guess, now that I think about it, that's something I could do, is I could cut down the trees on that thin spit of land, and if I just decided, well, I'm still going to leave it as land and not reclaim it for field, I could just spot a few bushes around so it just didn't look so barren and ridiculous, and then I can still drive through the bushes, but I don't know. I'm trying to think of something brilliant to say, and instead I'm just making a weird sound. Hopefully the microphone didn't catch it, but if it did, that's what was happening there. My brain froze, and that's the sound my body makes when my brain freezes. So, getting close here. And again, you can even tell from up above here, as we get close to the river, that, we've got an elevation change here, that this field starts to slope down very clearly to the water's edge, which would make sense in a well-designed map, which This one certainly is. And again, one designed off of DEM data, so which is digital elevation mapping data, so that it's actually the real elevation. I think that comes from like satellite images and so forth that make this an accurate representation. And so unless they had a cliff or something here in Saskatchewan going to the river, you would logically think the ground would slope down to the river, because that's kind of what Earth does when you have rivers and land meeting. They meet at a level, and then the land goes under the water, and hence you have a river. I don't know, I just figured I'd take that whole discussion to its absurd conclusion. Why not? It gives you something to listen to, hopefully something to be entertained with and laugh at. This field is harvested dead, not owned by someone, so yes, I am rolling through it a bit, being a little bit cavalier and not avoiding it, because all it would do was crush some of the harvested stubble, and it doesn't even appear to be doing that, so it's okay. And it's just a few passes. I've been very diligent in staying out of the field at the south end, for example, so now I'm not going to turn to the right this time, because then I'd be driving into the water, and once again, while in theory in FS you can do that, I shouldn't be doing that, because there's no way a farmer would take a $700,000 tractor and submerge it halfway into the river to make a turn. So, therefore I'm not doing it either, because that's just not real. Alright, I need more than one. Just worried that might be slightly wider. Oh goodness, did I not lock in? Now I've created that I need more than one regardless. Nope, I didn't lock in. I'm a fool. Oh boy. Anyway, it might make it a little bit better here, although I'm going to lock in. I think I'm going to lock in. Oops, let me pick this up, otherwise I will be plowing this field, which I don't want to be doing. Alright, well at this point I'm going to manually drive this, because otherwise if I snap to the line I think I will miss it. And at this point I have to go again, because I'm an idiot and left myself a little bit. I didn't snap to my GPS line because I was talking. Again, can't talk and think at the same time while I'm playing FSN, and I left myself some stubble. Alright, so if we go to the map, bam, bam, there we go. Clearly it takes a while on this. Now, I've got to be careful because it looks like I've got a little bit there. Let me take a look. I'll go down the edge of the field. Oh, I guess I had picked it up. See if I see some stubble somewhere there. It looks like I missed a few pieces. And it could be once again because we snapped the line and then as we went up. Now, is it here? No, it's further up. There's a piece near the edge that it looks like I missed somewhere. Yeah, a little further up. And then more into the center a bit. And I think there it is. I think I see that. I think it's right there in that corner. Yep. And then yes, I see the other piece there. So, and it might have just been, you know, obviously the field was a little further over, and then snapping the line, I may have moved a bit. So that should make those vanish. I was going to say it's not, but it did. Yeah, I don't know. How do I want to work this? Because it is relatively long this way. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to go, as I said, through the trees. So maybe I want to work these this way, because that's definitely longer that way. You know, obviously work around the island up there. And then maybe go north-south at that point. I don't know. I think that'll be my plan. So right now I'm gonna, do a little bit here. Let me turn on my lines and snap it over. Alright, so this I'm thinking may have been part of what caused me a problem. Let me now check my recording. No, it says I'm still recording. So, yeah, I wasn't sure if changing to the dots and going into the menu somehow had been part of my downfall. Alright, let me circle around here, clean that up a bit. It's pretty sloppy, but I've seen farmers do stuff like this where you go by fields and you're like, why did they plow that way? Well, now I'm doing it, and now I know why, and thanks to Farm Simulator, I get that experience. So that's part of the coolness of this game, is it lets you understand why people smarter than you in what is happening are doing what they're doing, where you sit there and say, what an idiot, why would he do that? Well, that's why, and you just didn't have enough information. So before you judge people, as they say, walk a mile in their shoes or drive a few hours in their plow. I knew that was going to happen, so let me fix that, because otherwise I'm going to have that on the map and it's not going to make me feel good. And right now I'm all about making me feel good. Of course, now I think I'm too close to be able to get back online with the plow, so alright. So now we'll go this way, and then he'll go there, and hopefully we don't leave that little bit, because I'm like, the line shows that we wouldn't, but that doesn't mean we wouldn't. So again, there's a little bit of rise to the trees, I think. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just hoping it's hilly, but, there is clearly rise going that way. Like that, where I'm headed is higher, and this is where, once again, it just gets a little difficult to see, but there is an elevation change. That's one thing I guess I've not seen in FSN, is something that gives me elevation. I guess that would be a cool thing, but that data just may not be available from the system for someone to use. But, basically include in the GPS, like it does in your car, that, hey, I'm up here at 300 feet above sea level, and now I'm 320 feet above sea level. Like, that way I would know, one end of my field is 20 feet higher than the other end, and that over that entire distance that I'm staring down now, there is a elevation change of 20 feet, but I can't tell for certain, because like this way, again, it looks like there's a little bit of a hill as I go that way, I think is what I'm seeing. But there's no way to tell. I'm sure if you're like in the map editor, you can tell perfectly, because I'm sure there's some Z direction that goes through the plane of the ground that is numbered, and you can see that the number is different. But I don't know how to do that, and so I don't know, is I guess what I'm saying. I don't know. So 6 a.m. on the server, which means I think I've been on here for a little over an hour already in this segment, which is fine. I've got the time this morning. It's Saturday morning in real life, and so I guess the one thing I didn't elaborate on entirely was, I said, I was excited to get on the server, but I was actually so excited I woke up before I normally do at 5 a.m., which sometimes requires an alarm, Many times doesn't. I kind of have a strangely weird internal body clock. And I guess I'll tell the weird story. Who knows if anybody's even going to ever hear it listening this far into the video, but if they do, you'll have a unique mature simmer story that you'll be able to tell your grandkids someday. So yeah, I don't wear a watch. I haven't worn a watch for decades. I guess, we've got lots of time on the field. There's no reason I can't make the story long. So we'll go ahead and get into all the details. So yeah, that started when I was young. Actually, probably even when I was still in college, but was working. So when I went through college, I was the first in my family to go to college, and family didn't have a ton of money, so I got some scholarships, but I only had like a half tuition scholarship. So I needed to work to help get myself through school, to try to do it without any debt, which I can say I did. I will also say to those who are trying to do it now, it was a much different time and much easier. For example, the school I went to, which happened to be DePaul University in the Chicago area, my entire 4 years of tuition there, even though they raised tuition usually 10-15% each year during the 4 years I was there, which led to us protesting, sitting down on city streets where they had to drive buses through us to break it up, whole 1960s vibe, even though it wasn't then. But we were upset, and we were going to let people know, because the school had promised us the tuition wouldn't go up after our first year when they raised it 15%, and they said, we're just doing it this year, but then we'll keep it the same till you graduate, and they didn't. And so one of those years, I think it was my senior year, we had had enough and basically did a sit-in on the main city street through campus, and didn't get us anywhere, but it made us feel like we were making sure we were heard. So anyway, before I truly get off on a total tangent, because I could go on and explain whole swaths of my life that have nothing to do with my watch, to go through school, I was basically working full-time and then going to school at night. So I would work as an intern, what was called a co-op position, with the company I was working with at the time. And I did that for 3.5 years of my 4 years at the school, and basically worked, if it wasn't full-time, it was very close. And 30-40 hours a week, so a lot of time. And sometimes you would be in the middle of a project, as you are in IT, which is what I was working in. I was working with computers. And so, as people who do that work and support work know, sometimes things don't really wrap up when it's time for you to go home. So you'll stay late, which was okay at that point, because I was being paid hourly. I wasn't salary. So if I worked longer, I got paid more. But either way, it turned into, if you're working, and so as I think about this story as I'm telling it, honestly, I probably wasn't doing it in college. So you got all that extra story of my life for free. So thank you for the, you're welcome for the bonus. But, so no, it was my job out of college where I went to work, and then I was salaried. And it would be typical to have a given week be 70 to 80 hours of work, which I didn't necessarily know when I interviewed and took the job. That became apparent later when, you kind of learn about a company culture once you're in it more clearly. And, so I would get, start work at 7 in the morning and routinely work till 10 or 11 at night. And so when you're doing that, and you have a watch on your hand, it's easy to start getting frustrated. And so that was what led to me not wearing a watch, was I just got sick of feeling the misery of, oh my god, it's 9 o'clock. And it's not that there weren't clocks on the walls, but, some places they weren't as obvious, or you could avoid them if you were trying to mentally avoid torturing yourself, that, who knows what time it is because I'm inside an interior building. Sorry, quite a bit of a coughing fit there. What I meant to say is you're inside a room, inside a big building, and that room is inside, interior, and so it has no windows. And so you can't see outside, and even if you could see outside, like obviously once it gets to be night, it's dark. You don't necessarily know what time it is by just looking out the window. But, as you'd be getting to that time, as those who live on Earth know, which I assume is everyone listening, as it starts to get to the end of the day, the sun sets and it starts to get dark, and you kind of know, it's late. And so just kind of not wanting that feeling, I stopped wearing a watch. So it was kind of like, I work until I'm done. When I'm done, I leave. And it's whatever time it is when I leave. So somehow in that process, I developed kind of an uncanny ability to inherently know what time it is, just by doing that. I mean, I can't describe how it works. It just is an ability I have. And I'm usually within 15 minutes, if not usually almost always within a half an hour of what the real time is. So pretty much everybody I meet, if we're ever in these weird situations or whatever, and someone's like, what time is it? And I don't have a watch. Everybody around me knows I don't wear a watch. I'll spout something off and they'll be like, well, how do you know? And sometimes there'll be other people with watches around and be like, yeah, I'll say it's 3:15 and they'll be like, yeah, it's 3:13 or something. And, everyone will look at me like I've got three heads. But, so again, my wife thought it was interesting, but she'll certainly tell people about it. Like, yeah, my husband can tell time without a watch and he's really good at it. And there are certainly, tricks, this and that, I guess, that I use to calibrate my brain, because it's not like I don't look at time throughout the day at any point in time. I mean, obviously I've got the time up here in the game. The time's not the actual time, but somewhere in my mental map, I've put in there that, it's off X amount of time when I got in here, because I knew what time it was when I got in here, because my computer had the time up. And I had seen the time on the stove in the kitchen, and I had, so again, it inherently, as people, we walk by clocks, and with computers and phones, they have even more access to clocks than probably ever before on the planet. So some of that is what helps, because usually I'm kind of like, well, it was, last time I saw a clock, it was this time, and, there's still some of that uncanny ability, because, yes, I have enough of a sense of, like, the passage of time in my body to know, yeah, that was like 2 hours ago, so when I saw the clock, it was 3, it must be 5. So it's not like I'm just never looking at timepieces and just and my own internal atomic clock. That I've never looked at a clock in 40 years and I know what time it is. It doesn't work that way, but so I'm not that big of a weirdo. But anyway, so I don't even know how that whole story started about being able to tell time, but I don't know. I have no idea why, but that's the story about why I don't wear a watch. So however we got on it, that's the story. But it's long enough in telling that story that I don't even remember what got me there. Usually it comes back to me. If it doesn't, I'm sure most of you will be like, who cares? That's fine. We're glad you're done telling us about your watch. We didn't really want to hear about that anyway. Yeah, it's been a crazy morning this morning. I don't know if it's just because I'm talking a lot, but a lot of coughing. So, anyway, we're getting close to our little stand of trees here. And it is, in the grand scheme of things, on this map, absolutely a little stand of trees. If I was a Civil War general and this was the field we were fighting on, that's probably exactly how I'd refer to it. That little stand of trees over there. It's also helpful that other people around me have eyes and would be able to see that and would be able to tell what I was talking about, just like you are able to, likely if you're watching this video. If you're just listening to my audio, just imagine a stand of trees off to the left. There's tall trees, there's short trees. They're all green right now because it's the middle of summer. So if you're viewing the audiobook version of this YouTube video, that's what's happening. So we'll go on from there. 3.1 hours of working time. Probably 4 passes or so before we're up on the island. And having to figure out what to do around the edge, which likely will just be plowing around the edge and getting up to the other side. And then I'll probably do 2, what in essence will amount to headland passes against that stand of trees, and then I'll change to a north-south heading to finish the field. And I might regret that on this end because we hit the river pretty quickly, but I gotta try it to learn how to best work this field. The good news is, this is my field. This is my farm. This is where my homies are at. So, sorry, it just had to come out. It was like there. I was holding it back, and I'm like, I just gotta say it, or it's just gonna be banging around in my head, and it's just gonna make me stop speaking, and I'm gonna sound stupid. And so instead, I'll say the word, and I'll sound stupid anyway, for a different reason. But I only have to remember how to work this one gigantic field. So once I figure it out, it'll be figured. So that will be the goal. But yeah, it is July. Whoop, there was some rocks there. It's interesting how, like clearly I just saw them, but from other angles of the map, like it doesn't, or other angles, it just doesn't render them. So it's definitely intriguing how that all works in the FS22 graphics engine, but so, I think I had at least one commenter talk about how they love this map and they're hoping I do more stuff on this map. I'm hoping you're still here watching hours and hours later in this video. Because that's why I'm making these videos, is I'm hoping people will watch them, but I'm also not foolish enough to understand that not too many people will sit and watch hours of plowing. But if you've got the fetish for Farming Simulator and you like it, and you like hearing car horns in the background where there aren't any cars on the map, because I think they have traffic off, now you've got that in your life because you just heard that car beeping. So, you know, those are the random things that my brain goes to when I sit with Farming Simulator, because it's not like I'm working on something or I'm thinking about anything specific. When you're just driving up the field in long rows, there is a little bit... Sorry, I probably should have muted that. There is a little bit of time where your brain just is your brain. And if anything, if these series give you anything, probably like any YouTuber, it gives you a unique view into my brain and how it works. And if you're a neurosurgeon, that might have a different fascination than if you're not, but either way, that's what we've got. So I'm going to say there's a hill here, even though, again, you wouldn't think so. But once again, this way, there's a hill here. So this is a nice view. So I'm going to go ahead and give us this view. And, you know, really give us the view. We'll take that away and see us going through the woods. Very nice. I do like the fact that we get all these different views. I could make some great comment on why how don't I have a camera floating in the air along with me, but even in my weird brain, that still comes across as pretty stupid, so I'm not going to do that, even though I kind of did. And then the Lord punished me with coughing after that, because I was just so embarrassing to everybody around me with those comments. But we'll continue on, and we'll pretend it never happened. I won't tell if you don't. So, alright, so we've got this one. I think I can leave my plow down, maybe in the middle of the island. We might catch that one tree, but hence is how we experiment. I may determine, well, I just need to turn off the GPS and move over. Or sometimes you catch the corner and like the plow will bend over a little bit, but it'll still pull off the tree. It won't get me stuck. Oh, magic deer. They just appeared. They didn't come walking out of the woods. They just popped onto my field. I'm probably going to regret this, but you know what? I'm committed. I'm just going to do it. Yep, exactly. I am going to regret it. I'm like, that is too far into my GPS line. That is not going to just bounce off and let me pull through. And, you know, I do know enough about this game, even though I do play a little bit like this coy, you know, I'm this little person who knows nothing about what I'm doing. You know, I've been doing this for a while now. I had a really, really solid feeling that that wasn't going to happen. Now, this one coming up, I think I'm going to clear the white tree. But this one, I think I can... Oh, I can't. Wow. That did surprise me. I thought that would be enough. And this might be simply a difference in FS22, that they've gotten rid of that ability to kind of glance off a tree. I think I just lifted my plow, so I don't want to do that. You know, that you had in FS19, because I've definitely done that, especially with, you know, any kind of wider implement like that. Many a time and had it work. So maybe they quote unquote fix that. That's something I could have done without them fixing, but it's neither here nor there. But we'll see. I might be able to pull enough. If I put my plow down, that also helps. It really does. If you want to plow, having the plow in a position that it can plow, number one thing you want to do. Just like if you needed a lesson in Farming Simulator, again, that's for free. Not that I charge for any of the tutorials on this channel, but it's for free anyway. So, wow. Not a good morning here, but once again, I'm going to write it off to, because I just don't feel like blaming myself this morning and taking responsibility, because it's just not where I'm at in my head. I'm just going to blame it on the fact that I've never worked this field before, and I don't know where things are, even though I can see them, and even though I've got fake lines on the ground in front of me that clearly show where I'm going to be going. I'm just going to pretend that I don't know any of that, because it's just easier to not take responsibility. It makes me more of a current day American. So, you know, if I offended a bunch of you and you've just shut off my video, you're not hearing me say this anyway, but sorry. A little bit of how I really feel about my fellow Americans just came out. Because the general stupidity of people has been grating on me for the last, I don't know, 5 years. So, anyway, enough about that before I truly get people irritated. You know, and I guess to finish that off, just, you know, in case people are wondering and are of that persuasion, yeah, I was one of you people at that point, but at some point when you go off the crazy end, you need to realize you're like well into crazy land, and you need to get off the train, and you need to get back into reality, but that's it. So let me get back in here. So yeah, if nothing else, as I sit here somewhat regretting that little line, but I'll leave it in there just because, you know, I want people to know who I am and enjoy the fact that they enjoy time with me as a person on YouTube that they don't really know, but that they spend some time with. So if you get to this point and listen and feel the need to comment on what I just said, and you're upset, or, you know, you support it, whatever, feel free. Because it'll be a test of whether or not anybody actually listened to this part of the video, because I don't know that that would be a comment or set of comments that wouldn't get some sort of response from folks. So, either good or bad. And while I'm not a member of the news media who looks for that, you know, I understand how that dynamic works. So yes, I think that was enough of a polarizing set of statements that I'm sure, you know, people who are in one camp or the other are gonna find it difficult not to take to their keyboards and let me know how they feel. So, there you go. hopefully the case tractor doesn't have a mind of its own per se, and remembers that comment, and then does let me down in the future, because I'd feel really hurt. So if it does have a mind of its own, hopefully letting it know that it would make me heartbroken if it did that to me, will keep it from doing it, even if it could. Alright, so now we're gonna snap back to the north-south reality. There we go. Just what I was hoping for, that it would just remember where I was, since I haven't left the game. I mean, not that it knew I was in the game versus not being in the game, nothing weird like that, like ghost farming, but like that it knew where I was in the field and the lines, and that when I went back to vertical that I might want to actually keep plowing where I had plowed before. So it did, so I'm happy. It takes very little to make me happy at this point in time. Many hours of plowing, and anything that makes those hours of plowing look like they're going to be ending make me happy right now. So it's not that I don't enjoy the plowing. I'm certainly having fun at this point talking to you and plowing. But like any person, I eventually like to not feel like, I think it was Sisyphus who kept rolling the stone up the hill, and then it would roll back down, and then he'd have to roll it, and it would roll back down. Like, I don't want to feel like that and like be stuck for the rest of my life plowing this field. That would not be fun. And here's exactly what I was talking about. Tree, meet tractor. Oh, I missed it a little bit, but because of that, I am going to run another pass here down the side of this field along the river, because I clearly know what's going to happen. I'm sorry I sounded like I was being electrocuted there. But anyway, here we go. So this is what will happen. So for those of you who have gotten this far, I mean, first off, again, awesome, because like you had no incentive. But for those of you who maybe just popped into the video here, like this tends to be how I get at the end of videos. I get like really nuts and say really, hopefully funny things that make things a lot more entertaining. So it's an incentive to stick around and just like watch these really long videos, because at some point I cross a line, and you just don't know what'll happen. You know, I'm not Eddie Murphy or Richard Pryor or, I don't know, Chris Rock, I guess, to get with somebody that people who are likely watching this video might actually know, because I need to stop assuming that everybody's an old fart like me. So, you know, but I'm not any of those guys, but I do my best to be entertaining, and I'm realizing right now, like, this is stupid right here. I don't need to be doing this. I need to do it when I start going east-west again, because at this point I'll just be following my GPS line. So stop plowing that way, because it's just stupid, as I said. So, but yeah, I'm going to go ahead for the same reason and do another pass here, and then I'll stop at the once I'm past the tree line. I'll fix that when I come by later. Urgh. Sorry, growling made me have to clear my throat. So, but yeah, so I'll stop there, because now I have room to maneuver, and now I can get back to mindless up and down the field plowing, which is, after all, a big part of what Farming Simulator is about. That's why we come here, so that we can play a game that doesn't require us to think for large portions of it. which honestly I think is probably a reason a lot of people play. It's just relaxing. Because once you get things done and you figured out what you're going to do, like, now I'm doing this all the way up that hill, that awesome hill, all the way till I get to the grass. I was going to say the road, but it's not really a road. I'm using it as a road, but it's not paved. It's not even graveled, if that's a term. It is now, because I used it, and therefore I claim that it exists. But yeah, I'm going to do that all the way that way, and that may take well over an hour, and I don't have to think a lot. I just need to make sure I line up and then get frustrated if that little piece of field that clearly I lined up too fast on requires me to dance around to catch it, just like that little piece that I have left over there that I can see on the hill that's just taunting me to get to it. I will eliminate you, I promise. Like I said, stick with me through these long videos. There is value, because at that point, you're probably in the same mindset I am. You've been listening here to me for hours, and you're like, I'm going nuts, and it'll just help you feel like you truly are, because I'll be saying some pretty nutty things, probably, like I am now. Alright. I'm trying to resurrect this to seriousness, but it just might not happen. I'll warn you ahead of time. I might get a few sentences into sounding like I've turned it off, but I know myself too well. It probably will come right back. It's like a gremlin. Yeah, these are a little too short, so I can't kind of go into zombie zone, because I have to keep doing things. I have to keep pressing buttons. But that's all right. I mean, this again is part of the work. Yeah, my biggest danger now as I continue to mute the microphone and then unmute it is that somehow I think I unmute the microphone and I don't, and then I don't have to clear my throat for a long period of time, and then all you have is the tractor going up and down the field, because I'll never know, because I don't edit the center portions of these videos when I know I'm just showing you everything. I just basically trim the beginning and the end, to kind of like a butcher with the fat. I just kind of make sure the slab of meat is presentable, and what's in the center of it, I really don't care. So, whatever. You get bone, you get gristle. You get no me talking. That might happen. So if it does, it's just because I've pressed the buttons in the wrong order. I'm trying to be really diligent about it, but this far in, it doesn't work. For those of you who are going to be joining me for the Lime video, hold on, man, because it's going to take place today at some point, probably starting right after this, and so it may start in this mode. I'm going to work really hard not to, because I know it's going to be two separate videos, and people expect more from me in the beginning. They expect mature simmer, as opposed to, I don't know. I don't know that it's really immature simmer, but as you can tell, my personality changes a little bit after these long stretches. And for those of you who just really felt like, this guy's kind of boring, and, I am a fun guy in real life. I really am. Just ask me. No, but most people do enjoy my company, which is always pleasant. It's better than... come on, really? See, this is exactly what I meant. I'll keep the bad words to myself, because that tree is about the size of a toothpick, but yet it's holding up a 700-pound or 700 horsepower tractor. Yeah, right. Like I wouldn't be able to just rip that thing right out of the ground. Anyway, enough of that. Enough of being brutal to trees. I don't need any comments from environmentalists telling me that I'm mean to the earth. It's a fake tree in a video game. I'm not suggesting that we do that in real life. So, but yeah, I want to get this done because I've got stuff to do. I've got rocks to pick. I've got lime to spread. So yeah, actually the next video, now that I think about it, because that would be a way to put me over the edge and put me into misery. So I'm glad that I'm talking to you, because I probably wouldn't have thought of this on my own just sitting here. I need to rock pick before I lime, because lime is white, rocks are white. If I don't do that, I'm not going to be able to see the rocks. They're just going to be in this field of white, and I'm going to be really, really cranky in that case. I mean, I'll be able to get near them on the map, but then I'm not visually going to likely be able to find them. So yeah, I'm going to rock pick first. So the next episode will be rock picking. Then it will be liming. So yeah, again, if the day continues as it is, if I really stick with this, my guess is I'm going to step away a bit. Probably not all day. I mean, I know I'll be back. But definitely, if I do, it'll be for hours, and usually that's enough to reset me, because I'll have done other things, and that's kind of what creates a reset, is I'm not doing the same thing, and therefore I start over again. Kind of the definition of reset. So yeah, if I do that, it's just I probably won't step away between this and at least starting the next thing. But yes, I can't imagine I would plow, rock pick, and go to liming without a break. So I think the liming video will be saved, the beginning of it, from the antics that you're experiencing now. It will not start that way. I cannot promise that about the rock picking video, because first off, I've tried it in FS22. There's just nothing redeeming about rock picking. I mean, to me, if there's a definition of busy work in Farming Simulator, for me it's rock picking. Like, I get they're trying to add a little reality to it, but it's a piece of reality I don't need, and why when I play on my own I turn it off. But in this world here in FSN, I don't have that control. I am not able to be God. It really stinks in that regard. So yeah. So I am looking forward to rock picking in the same way that I would look forward to going to the dentist and having him hammer out all my teeth without any painkiller. It's really that's how I feel about rock picking. So yes, if I do what I think I'm going to do, which is start the rock picking, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get to this stage pretty fast if I'm not there right away. Because I do just want it to be over, because it is excruciatingly painful. But I'm going to try to rein it in, because I don't know that it will be incredibly enjoyable. If it does become just pretty much a rant-filled crazy fest, I will title the thumbnail accordingly. Come listen to the Crazy Farmer, something like that. I don't even know. Do I have it up? Do I have it? Oh my god. I'm hitting V. I don't like not being able to tell if the plow is down. You can tell from the back there. You can see it move, but yes, it feels like the crows should eat my dead corpse, because I'm just about that. I feel that about that useful to humanity right now. I can't even determine if a plow is up or down in a video game. Alright, I think I've got a tiny bit that I need to hit over there, which I think I said, and I did get that little piece, so I'm really, really proud of myself. I'm kind of like a toddler at this point. Just basic functions make me really happy. You know, it's like, you know, look, Daddy, I picked up the pencil. But we'll go from there. Alright, I think this, yes, this will work. And have me lined up. I think I got a rock pile that came up on the edge here somewhere. It's like tree splotches, so maybe it was just tree splotches. I don't know. No, I think it's hard to tell. Are those rocks? I think they're rocks. I don't know. It really is hard to tell. I mean, usually the rocks, you know, I mean, it's dark like this, or, you know, dirt like this, and then suddenly this little glob of white powder shows up that I've learned are rocks in the game. It's how they show us rocks. My mouth's getting really dry, so I'm going to drink a little bit, because I can already tell. I feel like Cottonmouth. I've been talking for a long time. For those of you who don't like my talking, I think there's been a couple. Again, sorry. You can mute the video, and you can just watch the picture. I get that means you're not hearing the tractor, but at this point, I think you know what it sounds like. Anyway, before I say something else offensive to people, I'll stop it there, but you know, obviously, if people don't enjoy something, I guess don't do it that way. Change what you're doing a little bit, and that might mean that at least if you do enjoy my videos, which I hope you do to some degree, but that eventually I grate on your nerves, like the person that posted "My God, stop talking already" in one of the comments on one of the videos. Is, you know, maybe at some point it just gets to be too much. Maybe just realize your threshold for me is whatever the time that was. You know, 8 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 seconds. I don't know. But I believe I would annoy more people if I simply said nothing for a 3-hour video and they just listen to the tractor. Because I think if they want to do that, they'll just buy a white noise machine and figure out how to record the tractor sound and put it on there, and then just let that play. They wouldn't be coming to a YouTube video to listen to a tractor for 3 hours. They're coming to a YouTube video to watch someone play and more likely talk about what they're doing. So that's why I talk. If somehow I'm way off, I mean, definitely, you know, if I get 100 comments saying, no, we just don't want to hear you talk at all, we just want to listen to the tractor, I'll give you a couple episodes of that, I'm sure, but I'll go back to talking eventually because I like to talk. And otherwise, I mean, yeah, I guess I could record the video. You know, I suppose if everyone really wanted it, if I'm being honest with myself, if people just said, give me hours and hours of just game sound, it's easy enough to just turn off the microphone and just play. And if I want to talk, I can talk to myself and not record it. So I suppose I could do that. So there you go. I've given you options to solve your problem in multiple ways. Let me know that you want that, and if enough of you tell me that, I'll do that. If it's just 1 or 2 of you, I'm sorry, you're going to have to solve your own problem. But, you know, if it becomes clear that the majority want things, because, you know, I still believe in democracy, you know, we will go ahead and make the changes necessary to make that happen. But I think that's really unlikely. I don't think that's why people are here, because I've frankly gotten more comments of people saying they like listening to me, that I'm relaxing to them. Sometimes some of the comments border on making me a bit uncomfortable, of like, maybe they like me a bit too much, but whatever. If I can make people feel good, I'll go with that. There's not enough good in this world, for certain, so if I can contribute some to it, I'll be happy to do my part. And if that's using my God-given voice to talk on videos that then relax people and make them feel happy, that's my contribution to society right now. So, I do other things. After saying that, I realize it sounds like I'm a bum and don't have a job and I sit at home all day and play Farming Simulator. Like, I work and stuff. I have other contributions to society, but you know what I mean. We are so close. This is awesome. I will say, from an enjoyment standpoint, so again, I obviously can't assume that anybody has watched anything on my channel. So I have to fill in the gaps of what I know is there that you may not have seen. Kind of like, when you join a TV show and they say previously on. So previously on The Mature Simmer, on any of my FS22 videos, especially after the first couple weeks, I would usually get to a point talking about how I just was not enjoying playing. It was difficult for me to even finish what I was doing because it was just not fun. I will say, in a pleasant way then, I do not feel that way at this point. I'm really enjoying doing this work, to work in this field, and so I have high hopes that kind of the FSN feel that I had in FS19 is going to be the same thing that eventually develops in full force here on this iteration of Misty Hills, which is awesome because that's what I was looking for, and that's frankly why we held off on going to FS22, because I think we all knew deep down. For me, it wasn't that deep down. It was really right there. Like, I knew, but I can't speak for the other FMs about how far they had to go. That if we went to one of the base maps with the ability of no mods that we had in the beginning, I may have not played FSN until now, and at that point I would have been kicked out as a farm manager because I wasn't active. But I was honest with myself and said, yeah, I'm just not going to play if this is what the experience is, because even at single player where I had quote-unquote control, there was so little to control that was of any use that I would have rather have done anything else. It would almost have been the description of what I just shared on rock picking. The worst pain and torture you could think of in the world that you could do to a human being, that's kind of what it was feeling like for me. And I understand, I'm doing that with a first world perspective. I understand there's people in the world who get truly tortured, and it's excruciatingly painful and so forth, and I don't want to belittle that in any way. That's certainly awful that people do that to each other, but but it's a metaphor for explaining just how much I would have not done it because I just, I wouldn't have to. Because going back to what I just spoke about a few seconds ago, I wasn't actually being tortured by somebody, so nobody would be whipping me or beating me, forcing me to play Farming Simulator. But I would get in trouble for not following the rules of the community because I wouldn't be playing. And saying, the game sucks, why are you making me, wouldn't be a reason to not follow the rules. So I stuck in FS19 until I had a hope that we were at a point that I wouldn't feel that way. And I'm glad to say, after hours and hours of plowing this field, I don't feel that way. So I think we're in great shape for not feeling that way, because what I'm feeling now, if I feel anything negative, and I really don't, so I don't want to imply that, but I just have the conversation, is just the size of the field again. And once again, I know that's controllable. I only have to plant the amount that I'm comfortable with, and I realize that I may exceed that accidentally or intentionally a time or two, or more than that. But like the light at the end of the tunnel is always, this too shall pass, and I just need to get through this farming year and harvest this stuff, and then I'll be done. And then next year I do less because I couldn't handle what I did this year, or I can handle what I did, and stuff I guess we still have the locked up GPS in FS22. First time that's ever happened, but it's there. Because I had to turn it off. And of course, now it's gonna like reset the counter, which sucks, but what are you gonna do? Obviously I was barreling into the trees, so that was not fun. But again, not fun in the way that we were just talking about, that, oh my god, I don't want to play. I just hadn't experienced that in FS22, and frankly, not that I had thought, oh good, it's gone. I hadn't even thought about it, but now that it's happened, obviously I won't be able to put it out of my head. We still have that problem where the GPS gets locked up, so Giants, you still haven't fixed that. Or Wobster, you still haven't fixed that in your guidance steering. I don't know. I don't know where the problem lies, but it's still here. And I think the chances of Wobster and or Giants watching this video, and watching exactly at this point, is 0, but it's on the record now, and that's, at least in my mind, like any good law-abiding American, if I know it's on the record, somehow that gives me comfort, even though I likely know nothing's going to happen because nobody's going to hear it. But it's what we've got. What keeps us sane and keeps us from going crazy in a world that is a little crazy on its own. So, oh, I guess my wheel was turned a bit. I didn't honestly realize that, but when I looked down and grabbed it, it was not quite centered. So the challenge ends up being, if you've got a force feedback wheel like I do, in FS22 it's honestly implemented miserably. Giants hasn't fixed that. So it's like you turn an amount and then the wheel just like almost snaps free, because it's almost like you've been pulling against a rubber band and now it's snapped, and you get a little bit of free movement and then it does it again. And so like turning all the way around, you go through that like 2 or 3 times each way, and so when you're turning it back, you're fighting through that same kind of pressure. It's just not this even force feedback thing like it was in FS19. And I've tried. I've literally spent a couple hours on it collectively, and I'm just done trying. It is what it is, and I've just learned that this is how it's going to be. But the other thing that happens, which I don't think happened in FS19, is once you snap to the GPS line, wherever your wheel is, it gets locked there. And so then when you turn it off, like the wheel's in that position where it's not, wasn't quite straight or whatever. So if I'm coming out of a turn and I hit Alt-X a little too fast, meaning just faster than when I've centered the wheel, I gotta back up. I couldn't see through the trees, and I stopped turning. I knew I was stopping turning because the ridiculous pressure at the wrong point on the wheel was telling me that. But so no, I'm not bitter about the force feedback at all, not a bit. He says jokingly. No, I hate it. It's ridiculous that they can't figure this out. And as I said in my early FS22 videos, I wish Giants would have just left well enough alone, and then I could let my Logitech system manage my force feedback through the game, because basically there was a checkbox of games without force feedback, and you just check that for FS19, and it worked awesome. Now the Giants has decided, hey, we're going to play in something that we're not experts in, clearly, because what we did sucks. So yeah, let me tell you how I feel. Or, why don't I tell you how I really feel? But anyway, and again, I've turned it off before in the game, and turning it off in Giant, like literally, it still isn't working. So that it's sending whatever crap it's sending in the background of the wheel, whether it's on or not, and it just causes this ridiculousness. But so yes, I'm usually really careful to center the wheel before I lock it because of that. But obviously, again, as I'm getting to the end here, so like right now, like the wheel's actually pulling on its own to turn further, is what the force feedback does. Like if I let it go, it doesn't straighten out, it turns more. Now I'm fighting it to go straight, which makes sense. And then right there, I'm at 45 degrees and it basically snaps completely loose. So there's no force feedback in the last 45 degrees or the first 45 degrees, and then it's just like insanely in the wrong direction. So, like I said, it's just a horrendous implementation of force feedback. And, I've got a Logitech G920, which is one of the more expensive versions. So it's not that I've got, cheap hardware or whatever, low quality hardware, and that might be the problem. Like I've got, it's not a premium wheel. I've had people go off about, not in Farming Simulator, but in like iRacing and whatever, like, oh, you've got a cheap wheel, even though it was $300-400, because they're spending like $2,000 on their wheels because they want massive accuracy and realism. And to me, this is, massively better than what I had, which was a cheap, $70 Logitech wheel years ago. So it works for me, and I'm not going to spend 7 times as much to likely get something that is not going to really be noticeable in the way I play. I mean, the people, and I get, people being purists and on certain things, or just really being finicky. I'm that way just like anybody else about, say, home theater stuff. I've got a DVD that I've had for decades that basically lets me calibrate my sound system and my speakers down to the millisecond, so that my rear channel surround and arrives at my ears at the appropriate time, compared to the front, based on the distance in inches that those speakers are from my seating area. And, I will do stuff like that in that setting. So I get being obsessed with certain things, like, I need this awesomely accurate steering wheel that feels like I'm really in the car and has, ball bearings or whatever instead of the gear drive here. I mean, I did enough research on the 920 that it's not belt driven. It's gears, so that it allows for incredible accuracy, according to Logitech, but obviously it's not incredibly accurate enough for some people, and they buy other brands that are touted as more accurate. I don't know that I've seen anyone actually test the two against each other, so I don't know how much of that is just psychological BS, frankly, and how much of that is actually engineering and physics reality, versus just people convincing themselves, oh, I can tell the difference. Because I will tell you for certain, like when I was doing that in the early days of DVD, before, when Blu-ray and HD DVD were coming out, again, I'm an old guy, just like references to the comedians that lots of you probably don't know. When I was doing that, and those things were coming out, and we would, I would adjust my black level in my monitor to make sure it was all the way black, but not too dark, so that dark scenes wouldn't render properly, for example. And I would sit there and explain, to my wife and tell her, look, and she'd be like, okay, if you say so. I can't see a difference. That's how I feel with the people who argue that I need a $1,500 steering wheel, or frankly that I need a hundreds of dollars racing rig to race, so that I'm in a reclined racing seat and I have my pedals mounted on pipes and whatever, I do okay. I get the enjoyment I want out of the setup I have, and that's why I don't really argue with other people's setups. Like, if you're getting the joy you need, if you play Farming Simulator, like, to me, like, I don't know that I would enjoy playing Farming Simulator on a console. Well, in fact, I know I wouldn't enjoy it because I like the mods too much, that I know aren't available on console. So, to me, that just wouldn't be as much fun. But for other people, they enjoy it and they like it. And, and some of them probably would prefer a PC and can't afford it. And that, I'm certainly sorry that folks, there isn't unlimited funds for people and things aren't all free and whatever. And I'm not saying that in a snide way. I'm sorry if it comes across that way. I mean, I truly am sorry for those people who don't have the blessing I have of being able to afford a good PC to run this on and enjoy it and be able to play it this way, because to me it is leaps and bounds ahead of doing it on a console. And I know some people play on a console because they can't afford a PC, but frankly, I'm sure there are people out there who play on a console because they like playing on a console. And I'm not going to hold that against them and say, gee, you're ridiculous, like, a PC's so much better. If it works for you, it works for you. I mean, and so that I feel the same way when people kind of snobbishly harp on me about, oh, you've only got a Logitech G920. You're not good enough for us. Well, okay, maybe I'm not, and maybe you do race better because you have the other wheel, but, certainly I'm not going to say I'm thrilled with how I do in iRacing. I've never actually won a race. I'm not that good yet. I've gotten close. I've been in the top 3 a time or two. And I just trust that with enough practice, I'll get there. But, I also understand the reality of it. I spend most of my time doing Farm Simulator, which you can clearly see if you follow this channel and are on it. 90% plus of the videos are Farming Simulator related, because that's where my time is, so I can't make videos about things that I'm not doing. That would be awesome if I could do that. That would probably make me incredibly popular, not just on YouTube, but like in the world, if I could just do things that I'm not really doing, and get things done. But yeah, that would be like that would be a cool movie, maybe. I don't know. I'm not brilliant enough to be like writing a screenplay about it, but hey, if someone out there hears that idea and wants to run with it, I'm not going to sue you for you took my idea. Go ahead. I've had plenty of that in business stuff too, where I'm like, oh my god, I thought about that years ago and someone actually did that and made money off of it. The most obvious one is those goofy sunscreens in the windows of cars. Believe it or not, I thought about that like 5 or 6 years before. Like, why don't you just put a piece of cardboard in your window and then your car won't get that hot? And then lo and behold, somebody decided to sell folded pieces of cardboard and people were snatching them up like they were the greatest thing on earth. I'm like, oh my god, if I knew people would be dumb enough to pay for this versus just cut a box in pieces and put it up on their dashboard, like, I could have been a millionaire, but instead someone else was. You can do the same thing with that idea. Take that idea of write a book, do whatever, of somebody that can be doing one thing, but in the meantime they're doing 10 other things that they're not doing, and they're like the hero of the world because of it. Go with that. I'd love to see that story because I think it might be interesting, although I'm not quite sure how you'd show it, because again, they're doing things while they're doing other things, and obviously if it's like a movie, like unless you're just clearly playing them sequentially, like I physically as a human can't experience it that way, so I have to watch it as independent sequences, and then to me I don't think it's going to feel like they're doing it at the same time. It's going to feel like I just watched them do this thing, now they're doing this thing. You get what I mean? I just don't think you could do it. And even when I'm reading it, like, I can't read 10 things at once. So I'm still going to be like reading the episode of when they did this other thing while they were doing the other thing, but it's going to be, I'm going to be reading it after I read that they did the other thing, so it's going to feel to me like they did the other thing after they did the other thing, not at the same time. Other than you're just telling me they did it at the same time, and I'm believing you because I'm suspending, disbelief and reading a book that you wrote, and I'm saying I'm going to follow along in your narrative. So anyway, that's my idea for somebody to maybe turn into something that is probably never going to get made. But do I have my plow up? See, again, I don't know. No? Okay, I'm good. Alright, so this is the last piece. For those of you who jumped to the end, you probably jumped into some weird rant about things happening at the same time that aren't, or that are, but you can't perceive them that way. Trust me, go back an hour in this video and just listen, because I've just been off the wall for the last hour. I'm at my most entertaining at the end of these long things, so if you want to just hear a bunch of crazy, go ahead and listen to that, and perhaps listen to the next episode, because I will be jumping in and starting rock picking right after this, but it's going to be a different episode on a different day in YouTube, so, because this one's long enough. But if I go here, come on, it takes so long. Bam, I'm done. I have plowed field 9. Look at that. I can't even fit this on the screen. I guess I can. We are done. Fold this up and go store ourselves. So he's going to get to say hello to his fellow implements. They're going to like learn. They're all part of the new Misty Hills family, and they're all going to get to help me succeed together. So I'll go park them next to his brothers and sisters. I don't think farm implements have genders, but who knows? Boats do. I mean, people always are, she or he, so why not? Do farmers refer to their tractors as, oh, I was pulling her behind me, or, yeah, I was using him to spread seeds? I don't know, maybe? I don't know. Any farmers? Let me know. Do you guys refer to your implements by gender? Or are they non-binary and just things? Anyway. Again, the way the world is today, I probably just offended someone else with that statement, but... So, I don't have a pressure washer. I don't have a repair station. I mean, I could take things over to the shop, the actual shop in the village, and do that, but I don't know. So I'm going to stop this here, and I will pick up from right here with the next video as I then drive up to go get the rock picker. So you've got a sneak peek of what's coming next, and you'll see it likely tomorrow, because I'm not planning on recording anything in between, because again, per the story I was just saying, I can't do something while I'm doing something else, so and I am planning to just immediately stop this video and then start the next one. So I think it makes sense. Makes sense in my head. If it doesn't in yours, I'm sorry for confusing you. I'll shut up now. I'll see you next time.